Okay, I may as well go ahead and get started then. Um, Thanks for everybody coming to the second installment of our education series this year. Um, Tonight we have Fight Major Andrew Carlisle, who 10-time world champion with the Field Marshal Montgomery and currently the Fight Major of the Carnegie Mellon University Fight Band. And I'm happy to say a very good friend. So I'm sure you've all seen Andrew around at different games and contests and concerts and everything.
Beer tents.
So if you would all just mute yourself if you haven't already done so. And thank you, Andrew, for coming on, and it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the welcome, Jim. There, yeah. So I've been asked to do a bit of a presentation on bagpipe tone, and let me see. Can you all see that yet?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. So just a little bit of background. Thanks for the warm introduction there, Jim. But just so you have an idea who this idiot is that you've got talking to you tonight. So I'm originally from Ballygowan, County Down in Northern Ireland. Technically a dual citizen of Ireland and the United Kingdom. I've been playing a Grade 1 pipe band since '96, and I was originally taught by the pipe major of Rivara pipe band, Sam Connolly. I'm from half a mile away from the Rivara Band Hall. That's where I learned. And then two other significant instructors I had growing up were the late Freddie Russell. Some of you may know his brother, Nat Russell, who went on to be the pipe major of the RUC Grade 1 band and also the world champion Grade 1 Victoria Police from Melbourne, Australia. And then also they give him his full title, Dr. Pipe Major Richard Parks MBE. I like winding him up, giving him his full title. So yeah, he was instrumental in my instruction as well coming up. I studied Pibroch with Andrew Wright, who is the president of the Pibroch Society for many years, from about '96 right through to I left to come to the States. And then I started going to the great late Jimmy McIntosh, and that was from 2010 when I first moved here until he passed away at the young age of 96 in 2021. As Jim was saying, I've been a member of Field Marshal Montgomery for 24 years, a solo competitor for 30 years. I've performed and taught in about 25 countries. I've been on the judging panel in the eastern United States for 16 years, so I'm on the panel for solo piping, Pibroch, band piping and ensemble. I've had many roles with the Virginia International Tattoo. Currently, I think my title is the artistic director, and I also run the American Pipe Band Championships each April on School Plaza in Norfolk, Virginia. My current full-time job, as Jim was saying, a professor of music and the director of piping at Carnegie Mellon University, and I've been here. This is my 16th year being here, which is hard to believe. Hard to believe mostly because I haven't been deported or fired yet. Anyway, so just a bit of background so you can kind of see where I'm coming from of what I'm going to talk about. So quite a few hats there that I'm wearing. You know, I'm a solo performer, competitor, a band competitor, a pipe major, a judge, a teacher, and then I also organise competitions, events, things like that, tattoos. So since I'm sitting in Carnegie Mellon right now, I'll give you a little 30-second background as to Carnegie Mellon and why we have bagpipes here. Well, basically to celebrate the heritage of the two founders of Carnegie Mellon. First of all, Andrew Carnegie, who in the early 1900s would have been then's Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. Came from pretty humble beginnings in Dunfermline, Scotland. And then Andrew Mellon was from Kappa in Ireland. There's a couple of photos. You may have heard of the Mellon Bank, for example. So he's the guy who founded that. So to celebrate the heritage of those two, that's why we'll have Everything Scotland here. The football team's called the Tartans, and yeah, there's a lot of Scottish heritage involved with the university. And we were the first institution in the world to have a degree in piping. There's been piping here since 1939. Jimmy McIntosh started the bachelor's degree in 1990, and then when I got here in 2010, after a year, we started the first master's program. And today we have about 55 members between pipers and drummers in the band at various different levels. It's quite a funny story how the degree program came about. Jimmy was teaching in the local Pittsburgh area, and there was a guy taking lessons from him who happened to be a professor of music and also the principal oboe of the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra and taught at Carnegie Mellon. And he soon discovered that the bagpipe was a much harder instrument to learn than any classical instrument that there is. So he proposed to the faculty that would start a degree program where students could study under Jimmy and use the bagpipe as their principal instrument towards a music degree. And it was pushed through and accepted. And since 1990, we had our first students that registered for that. So there's a photograph of what they looked like. All right, so back to why I'm here.
Andrew, I don't think it's advancing on our side, the PowerPoint.
All right, well, let's try again then. All right, share screen. All right, let me see. Is it doing anything on your side?
Yep. Yeah, we're seeing it now.
You're seeing it? Is it moving?
Two separate but related topics.
Right, okay, hold on. Something's going wrong.
We were on slide 8.
Okay. All right, let's try this. All right, you seeing that?
Yep, we're seeing the first slide there.
Okay.
There, now it moved.
Good. Right. Is it moving there yet?
Yep.
All right, so
Why do we have bagpipes
there's
at
what
Carnegie
there's what you
Mellon?
missed so far. So yeah, we got some photos. There's some photographs of Jimmy McIntosh and Eldon Gatwood, who I just spoke about. So on to what I'm here to talk about. So I focus on bagpipe tone competition preparation, and two separate but related topics. So it's going to be very similar, whether you're a leader of a pipe band or if you're going to perform on your own as a solo piper or a solo piper in competition or elsewhere kind of thing. It's going to be a similar kind of process. And I'm also later on going to talk about tuning multiple pipers within a pipe band, kind of the pipe major's role or the musical director's role, and all achieving good chanter and drone unison and achieving good intonation. Okay. All right. So first of all, just some words to describe the differences between what you're kind of looking for between a solo sound and a band sound. You'll hear a lot of strange words used, but basically, when you're performing solo, you're looking for something that's sweet, mellow, has clarity, and a finer sound. Whereas in a band, you're looking for something robust, solid, powerful. With that being said, regardless if you're playing in a band, you're setting your bagpipe up to play in a band or a solo performance competition, you still want the bagpipe to be in tune, a pleasing sound to the ear. You want well-balanced intervals, and you want stability in terms of it's in tune at the start of the performance and at the end of the performance. Tone's probably the most important thing that we need to think about when we're performing. It's the first impression you're going to give to a judge or the listener, the audience, whoever it may be. And this is a quote that I'm quoting from one of my first teachers, Freddie Russell. You can listen to a bad piper on a good instrument. You can't listen to a good piper on a bad or out of tune instrument. And that's very, very true. Stuart Little, probably the number one piper in the world, if he lifted a really bad out of tune set of pipes, it wouldn't sound very good. You could get a grade 5 piper to play his set of pipes, Scots Wahey, and you're gonna be able to listen to it. You want to be doing the compositions that you're performing justice. If you're playing out of tune, you're kind of insulting the music as opposed to celebrating the music. And one of the big characteristics of bagpipes is that they produce harmonics. Now, harmonics are only going to be produced when they're in tune. All right, so if we're playing out of tune, we're not fulfilling the instrument's potential. We're not going to produce any harmonics. So when we're judging and when you're practicing, you should be thinking of these three areas where you're listening for. And first and foremost, it's going to be tone. You know, you could have the best technique and you could have, be playing really musical, but it's not going to sound great if you're out of tune. All right, so what the judges are listening for is the quality and steadiness of tone, and then you get into the technical side of things, which is the quality of the embellishments, the consistency of the embellishments and technique, and then your musicality, things like tempo, rhythmic accuracy, the continuity of rhythm, expression, and phrasing. So the biggest part of achieving a good tone is all in the preparation. The first thing you need to do is ensure your instrument is comfortable. All right? If your bagpipe's too hard and you're struggling with it, you're never going to play your best. You're never going to blow steady, and you're never going to get a great sound if your bagpipe's too difficult for you. And probably what I witnessed more actually is the opposite, where somebody's either through being lazy or whatever, they're playing a reed that's too easy for them, and they're squealing it, and there's squeals and squawks, so they're overblowing the top hand and blowing so hard the drones are stopping and things like that. You need some sort of resistance when you're playing, especially when you're under competition. You've got, everyone gets a bit nervous. People get adrenaline. You're maybe going to blow slightly harder than you normally do in your kitchen or your bedroom where you practice. All right, so you want to make sure you're not playing a bagpipe that's too easy as well. The easier and the finer you make a bagpipe, the more kind of susceptible it's going to be to both climatic changes, like in terms of temperature, and also, pressure changes. If you blow, the finer you make a reed, it's going to change in pitch with the slightest little difference in pressure or in blowing intensity. Then your maintenance, you want to ensure your bag is airtight. No matter if you're playing a sheepskin bag, cowhide bag, synthetic bag, a bag with a zip, you need to make sure it's airtight. And that includes the stocks are well tied to the bag, whether you physically tie them or you use the O-ring clamps, or if for a synthetic bag or whatever how the bag's tied to the stocks. And another good tip for checking the stocks, if there's any cracks in them, is if you use a pint glass or a large mug or water bottle or something, I would never submerge a bag in water of any description, but if you cork the bag up and blow it up and kind of dunk or dip each stalk in, if you see any bubbles, that there's going to be a leak or a crack happening somewhere in the stalk. So that's a good way to check that as well. So you want to make sure everything's airtight. I want to spend just a second talking about hemping of the joints, and maybe I'm just going to stop sharing my screen a second because I'm going to show you a couple of things. I'll first of all show you on my pipes. We're going to see. So you see where the tenor drones are tuning, right? They're about halfway up the hemp, right? You want them somewhere between halfway up the hemp and the bottom of the hemp. If you have the tenor drones tuning all the way down towards the projection mount, none of this bit, which produces the harmonics, is being exposed. All right, and the sound's not traveling through that, so you're turning all this kind of fancy bit of the pipe into just a straight column of air. All right, so the more you can expose of that, the better. These top sections of the drones. Obviously, if you go to the very, very top, you risk that you're gonna it's gonna fall off. So you don't want to go right to the very tip of the tuning pin. Similar on the top section of the bass. And just take the hemp away, similar, about halfway up, or between there and it's probably about a centimetre between the middle of the hemp and the bottom of the hemp, so somewhere in that region there is where you want that section to be. The bottom section of the bass, a good rule of thumb is 2 fingers. All right, if it's tuning way up high, if you're playing in a band, it's quite likely to double tone when you strike if you have this section tuning up too high, and if you have it tuning too low down here. The other thing about having it up too high, this here is all putting pressure on that pin, so you might actually damage your pipes if you have it right at the top of that hemp. So it's not a good idea to have it too high for this section. Too low and you can actually start getting weird overtones from the bass drone, like a kind of growling, or I've heard it described like a motorbike sound happening. So 2 to 3 fingers is a kind of good gauge for the bottom section of the drones, of the bass drone. And a good rule is hemp. I get asked a lot, how tight should my drones be? Well, it depends what you're talking about. Anything that goes into the bag or into the stocks, like the blowpipe, the chanter, and the drones at the stocks here, you want quite a bit of resistance, but you need 2 fists to kind of twist and remove the kind of joint. Anything that moves up here, like the tuning, 2 fingers and a thumb, and it should never move down here when you're moving here. So 2 fingers and a thumb, and it should move with relative ease, but it's not going to fall down. All right. But yeah, so anything that you're going to tune, 2 fingers and a thumb. Anything down here, like 2 fists, it should be quite a good bit of resistance, And I think I saw a question in the chat. Yes, somebody has a question. Let's see. Are those rules of thumb true for both modern bagpipes as well as vintage instruments? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it makes it a lot easier with synthetic reeds with all synthetic reeds have some form of tuning screw. It might be inside or outside the reed body, but yeah, that's roughly where you want all your bagpipes to tune to get the optimal sound. So you'll be able to set the pressure of the reeds, and then I'll talk a bit more about drone reeds in a sec, but yes, that's roughly where you want them to tune. And the other thing I'm just going to show you very briefly is the best way to hemp just got a joint here with no hemp on it. want your hemp to last for about 10 years, probably actually longer, and never have to redo it, this is the best way to do it. If you use unwaxed hemp and wax it with cobbler's wax, I'll just do a little bit so you can see the difference. So just run it through the cobbler's wax a few times. And if you get a little bit of leather, you can run that through. It's going to be probably difficult to tell on the camera the difference there, but you'd hopefully see a little bit of a change. So it's kind of turning black there along there. You're basically coating it. The pre-waxed hemp just is it becomes kind of almost like rubber or plastic whenever it kind of compresses, and it also is quite sticky. So when you're hemping, the best way to do it, and the way you're never going to have to redo it again, or you will eventually, but 10, 12 years you shouldn't have a problem if you do it properly the first time. You want to go into each and every groove and do one complete layer and put the tension on, and go each, one layer right next to each other. None of this kind of like any old kind of, that's why your hemp starts spinning, because there's not enough tension on it. So you want to do, with the cobbler's wax, at least 2 layers, and then the last couple of layers just without the wax. All right, so that'll protect the pipe, but also the unwaxed hemp will start absorbing some moisture, so if it rains or if you a cold day and you get condensation and stuff like that. All right, so that's a good tip and the best way to hemp your pipes. And the neater you are with it and the more tension you put on it, it's very rare that your hemp's going to spin. The other problem with, once you get joints where the hemp starts spinning, or you've put it on too loosely and it swells up, you can actually start getting cracks and damage your pipes and stuff like that. All right, so that's a little tip about the hemping your pipes. I haven't mentioned it yet, but one of my biggest pet peeves is tape on chanters. All right, it's black electrical tape. You can buy a roll of it in Home Depot for $2 or whatever it is. So a couple of tips about the tape on chanters. First of all, keep it in a Ziploc bag or some sort of plastic bag, because if you don't, you're going to get a bunch of fluff and fuzz all over the edges of it, and it's the edges of it that are going across the holes. All right, so that's a very simple tip for tape on chanters. The other thing, a lot of pipe majors, don't touch the tape on your chanter or whatever. Well, if it's all sticky and sliding all over the holes, it's not going to stay in tune. So it's kind of up to you to make sure that your tape's in good conditions. And I've judged quite a bit in the Midwest that some of your games, it gets super hot, and if you're traveling with your pipes in the car, in the case and all that, the adhesive and the tape can easily melt and get kind of sticky and all of that. So we'll show you just briefly. It's going to, again, be difficult to see on the screen, but to replace a piece of tape, a kind of idiot-proof way of doing it is, if you cut a little piece of tape off, I'm also a great believer, if you cut tape with scissors or a sharp knife, it'll last a lot longer than if you stretch or pull it and stuff like that. Right, so say I want to change the tape on this, I'll do the C. With that little piece of tape you cut off, fully cover the rest of the hole with the little piece of tape. Take the old bit of tape off on top, and now you've got a bit of tape on the bottom of the hole and none on the top of the hole. Then replace it exactly where it was before. And I'm a great believer as well, 2 layers of tape and never start the edge of it across the hole or never end it across the hole. Just it'll lead to, if a piece of tape does slip or does start peeling off, if you have it over the hole, it's gonna be more likely to cause problems if it's over the hole versus around the back. And then, most importantly, take the little piece of tape that you covered off. So that's just a very easy way. I teach all my students summer schools and stuff like that. To do that with changing tape. And during the summer, it might be every week you need to start changing tape. Once it starts melting or sunshine and band practices outside and stuff like that, parades. You need to change your tape quite frequently, or it's going to get sticky, not only uncomfortable to play, but also start moving and peeling and all sorts of stuff. So a little bit about the tape there. Okay. Let's see, another couple of questions there, did I? Do you have any recommendations on tape that last well or don't work well? Okay. Any form of black electrical tape, make sure it's the thin stuff. Don't get the really thick stuff, because one, it doesn't fit in between the holes, and then when you cut it doesn't seem to have the same properties. So the thin kind of stuff, and then also the other thing I would do with tape, just black electrical tape. Every piping store sells it. Typically they buy it from the same hardware stores as what you can buy online or go to Home Depot or whatever and get, and then they mark it up. But just any hardware store you can get good black electrical tape. Some of them have like heat resistant and stuff like that on the packaging. That's probably going to be better than something that doesn't. But yeah, just very simple black electrical tape. Question about, all right, residue, the adhesive or residue on the chanter. Yeah, two things. Glue gun will take it off. So yeah, when if it's really sticky on your chanter, glue gun will take it off, and also WD-40 will take it off. But you need to make sure that you only use a very little amount, and you don't coat the whole chanter in it, and dry it off and make sure it's clean before you put the new bit of tape back on. I would only really do that if there's a real need, if there's a lot of residue on the chanter. You shouldn't really ever let it get to that stage. If you have, once the tape starts kind of melting, if you take it off, there shouldn't be that much residue to clean off. Teflon tape, I'm not a fan at all. The only place I would use Teflon would be on like a water trap or something like that. I've never been a fan of Teflon tape. Some people like it on the tuning pins for their drones, because you can get a little thread, so it makes it easier to tune your drones. You can turn it clockwise to go down, and anti-clockwise. You guys say counterclockwise to go up, and that kind of thing. I've never been a fan, because once it starts kind of unraveling it, and it can also get quite shiny and slippy and stuff as well. But some people like it. I've just never been a fan of using Teflon tape. Certainly wouldn't use it on the stock joints, and I've never used it on like anything that you tune with your drones. So, okay, back to talking about the sound here. Where did it get to? All right, so I've talked about the chanter tape there, and the other thing, if you're going, no matter what performance, or even to have in the house, when you're practicing, make sure you have spares, spare reeds, spare tape, hemp, valves for your blowpipe, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you have all the spares, and then make sure you have spares in your pipe case when you go to competitions, etc. as well. Okay. There we go. All right, so what creates a good bagpipe? So there's a whole lot of different theories about, the pitch is getting higher and higher, and but there's a kind of spectrum which is acceptable today, which is quite wide. So somewhere in between 475 and 485 seems to be about where the bagpipe pitch is currently. Any higher than that, you're going to get pretty thin and quite tinny kind of sound. Any lower than that, it's going to get quite dull. All right, so somewhere in that bracket, which is quite a large bracket there, you want to, and feel free to use these electronic tuners. You can get the little Korg ones that are about $10, and there's even these bagpipe tuning apps and stuff like that. If you're not that confident as to what pitch you're at or tuning, use these tuners to help and assist. That's what they're for. A good bagpipe will have correct chanter intervals, so a correct scale when you're playing, and also a good balance between the bottom and the top hand. A lot of the times you'll get a dull bottom hand and the top hand sounds okay, or the bottom hand's okay, but the top hand's really shrill and thin. Right, so it's about that balance all the way up the scale. You want to make sure the drones are steady and they're going to remain in tune for the duration of your performance, especially if you're playing a long pibroch or a double MSR in a pipe band terms, in a medley in grade 1, 7 minutes. So quite a long time to have your bagpipe drones stay in tune. You want to make sure I've talked about the strength of your chanter reeds. You want to make sure the drone reeds are efficient and they're taking the optimum amount of air. They're not bleeding air, or they're not shutting off, as you're playing. And then overall, it's all about a balance. You want a drone balance between the bass and the tenors, right? So you want a good blend of the bass and tenors. You don't want one to overpower the other. One of the big faults I do here is not enough bass sound. All right, and you get that a lot if you're playing a lot of synthetic stuff and also going through a whole bunch of moisture control. A lot of the time that kills a lot of the drone sound, and the bass sound seems to be the one that suffers quite a lot from that if you've kind of too much of that going on. And then you want the chanter and the drones to have a good balance as well. You don't want the drones to be too quiet, or you don't want the drones to be too loud in comparison to the chanter. All right. So you have the option of sheepskin versus synthetic bags. I'm a great believer, and I'm pretty sure 1,000% of all top grade 1 pipe bands and soloists will tell you that you'll get a better sound from a sheepskin bag. However, it's about 100 times the work, right? You have to season it, you have to maintain it, you have to tie it in. There's a whole lot of work involved with it. You can get about 99% of the sound and the total quality using a synthetic bag, and a lot of the top soloists in the world play synthetic bags. I mentioned Stuart Little earlier, Angus McCall, Willie McCallum, they're all playing synthetic bags. They will all tell you you can get a better sound if you play sheepskin, but synthetic, easier to install, cheaper. They last about 7 times the length a sheepskin bag will last because they rot, decay, natural material, etc. Regardless of what bag you play, I would definitely recommend that you need some sort of moisture control system, be it a split stock, like a tube water trap from your blowpipe that just deflects the moisture to the back of the bag. That's the most simple form, to the kind of canister systems that you get. There's several different brands out there where you get a canister full of desiccant and then various tubes that connect to all the drones and even the chanter. Depending on what climate and how wet a blower you are, that'll determine how much moisture control you need in your bag, but everyone kind of does need some amount of moisture control. All right, so chanter reed selection. This is obviously that plays your melody. So this is kind of one of your most important parts. So you want to make sure when I'm selecting reeds, the first thing I do is I pick up the reed and I blow into it, and if I can't get a physical sound out of that reed, I just set it back down again. All right, I'm not going to start working with that to, if I can't physically sound the reed, the chances are it's not going to be a good fit. Or if it's not making a sound. Also check the reeds initially for any like splits down the cane or corners missing. Sometimes even when they get shipped and stuff like that, things can happen. So, you don't want to start playing a reed that has, the corners missing and things like that. So once you find one that seems roughly about the right strength, put it in the chanter and test the strength in the chanter. Sometimes what you think's okay, when you put it in the chanter, it's harder than I thought, and sometimes it can be the opposite as well, actually. Test the pitch. As I said, you've got that window. Some people like it a little bit in the lower side of the pitch. Some people like it nice and sharp and bright. It just depends on personal opinion. But I would definitely try to stay within that bracket, different if you have to play with a church organ or an orchestra or something like that, you have to go to 466. That's a completely different ball game. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're going to play in a solo competition or a pipe band, you want to be in this kind of region. So if you average that out, 480, 481, 482 seems about the average that you're going to get. And that's kind of to start with. It always is going to go up it usually goes up about 2 to 3 hertz, from when you start to when you warm up and are at full kind of pitch. When you're testing reeds and chanters, take the tape off. Don't try to get a false reading by leaving the tape all where your previous reed was, because it's got a completely different reed. So start from scratch. Take all the tape off, especially notes like low A and high A. Make sure take all. If you've half the holes covered in tape, you're not really testing the reed properly. You want to, at the end of the day, the more of the hole you can expose, the better. You don't want to have too much of tape on a chanter. That's what's going to make a chanter the note kind of duller in sound. So the first interval you always want to check is the octave, which is low A to high A. If the low A to high A is good, generally every single note in between, and the low G, I guess, as well, which is outside of that range, can be tuned. All right. If the high A is too flat, you don't want to start taping the low A to try to get it. So you want to try and get that low A to high A balanced. And you can always, if the high A is flat, you can sync the reed and things like that. You want to try and get that low A to high A right first. And then after that, you can start balancing the rest of the chanter. And then after that, still blowing it in your mouth, check for two things. Check that there's a reasonable scale there, that nothing's really badly out of tune. And then also check that there's no malfunctions happening. Make sure it's not squeaking every time you do a G grace note on low A or low G. Make sure it's not gurgling on the bottom notes. Make sure the high A is not scratchy or raspy. I'm sure you've all experienced some of those in the past. And then check the F isn't double toning, whereas you're getting the F natural sound coming out instead of the F sharp sound. So there are some of the malfunctions you want to test. If it's doing it at this stage, you probably want to select a different reed. After that, put the reed in the chanter, and put the chanter in the pipes, and then play it in the pipes with the drones going. Tune the drones to low A, and then see how it sounds, see how the pressure is, and all of that, and then you can go from there. And then once you've got the drones tuned to low A, you can tune each and every note on that chanter to the drones. It's a self-tuning instrument, one of the only ones that exists. So yeah, that's how you go about selecting a chanter reed. All right, and the most important part is bear in mind that chanter reed that's brand new out of the box, that's come from the reed maker, it's brand new. There's no moisture in it. It's going to change. Once it starts getting a bit of moisture, it's going to flatten off, especially in some of the upper register, like the F, the G, and the high A. You're going to generally get it to flatten off a little bit as you play it. So you need to check it later, the next day, and it usually takes about a week for a reed to kind of settle in terms of the moisture content, and then you'll get a bit more stability with it. And that's another reason why you shouldn't really change your reed the day before a competition, or worse, the day off a competition. Obviously, if you break your reed, you've no other choice, but you want to make sure a reed's kind of settled and acclimatized before you go and perform with it. Drone reed selection. There's less and less people these days playing cane drone reeds. I'd be very surprised if anyone in this call is. It's not to be discouraged, but it's so much easier these days with synthetic reeds. Unless you're a very top open level piper or you're playing in a top grade 1 band, I would not recommend playing cane drone reeds. I said it's about 100 times the work playing a sheepskin bag versus a synthetic bag. It's about 1,000 times more work with cane drone reeds versus synthetic drone reeds. And especially the climate here, I found I was playing cane when I first moved over here, and basically it's a lot drier in climate here. So in Scotland and Ireland and all of that, every day you would go to play your pipes, they were working fine. Here, every time I would blow my pipes up, all 3 drones were stopped. It's a lot of work and a lot of maintenance to try to maintain cane drone reeds here, and even more so if you're going to travel on aircraft and planes and whatnot, going to play in competitions and going to Scotland and all of that. I would strongly recommend the synthetic materials unless you're a very accomplished piper. So similar process. You want to test the strength of it. Blow the drone reed into the drone, and make sure it's not stopping too easily, because if it's stopping too easily in your mouth, it's going to stop when you've got a chanter reed and 2 other drone reeds going with it. And also you want to make sure it's not completely bleeding air, or you can get to that second tone. It's not double toning. Again, use a tuner. Got one sitting there somewhere. That's a pretty fancy one. You can get the cheap ones just to give you an idea of what pitch you're going to be at. And then I've already spoke about where you want your drones to tune. The tenors being the bottom to the middle of the hemp, the top section of the bass to be the same, and then about 2 to 3 fingers for the bottom section of the bass. Another really important thing, once you've got the drones all in the pipes, test starts and stops. Even if you're a solo piper, there's nothing more embarrassing than going up and it takes you 20 attempts to get your pipe started. It's not part of the competition in solo piping, but it's kind of, you don't want to go and play at a parade or like a church service or whatever it may be, and be sounding like a pack of Rottweilers going trying to start your pipes. So you want to make sure that they're you're able to start and stop with ease. And then once you've got to that stage where you've got your pipes all in tune, it's about trying to see if you can get them to stay in tune, all right, and get, and how long it's going to take for them to stabilize. Generally, once you've played for about 5 minutes, you should start to be able to, the chanter should be blown up to pitch, and you should be able to play for, a few tunes, and the drones should stay in tune. And if that's not happening, you need to usually adjust the bridles and stuff like that to get them all uniform. It's important you have the 2 tenor drone reeds set with the same pressure. All right, if you've them set the same pressure, they're going to react the same and hopefully stay in tune the same as well. Okay, so with all of that, achieving a good bagpipe in a steady tone, it's about 60% maintenance and preparation. I guess reed selection would be involved with that as well. About 20% tuning and like training your ear, and obviously you need to warm up the instrument as well for it to stay in tune. And then the other 20% would be steady blowing, all right, and maintaining a steady pressure, all right. So that's the kind of balance. So a lot of this is done kind of at home versus, you know, on the day of a competition. It's all maintenance and preparation. Is how you get the good sound and the good bagpipe. I've mentioned briefly some factors that will affect your bagpipe. So temperature, humidity. So humidity from the air and humidity from your breath that's being blown into the bag. And also the storage of the instrument. The amount of times I've witnessed people leave their pipes in cars when it's 90 degrees at the games, it's quite a serious thing, you know. And then they wonder why their bagpipe's tuning at 500 hertz. You know, it's because it's, you know, 130 degrees in your car. So, you know, be sensible of like where you store the instrument as well. That goes for being at home as well. Don't put them in your garden shed whenever, you know, it's freezing outside and all that kind of thing. You know, a little bit of common sense as to where you store your instrument is important as well. So a routine for practicing at home in terms of like the tone and the instrument. This is what I do, and this is, I'm pretty sure, what everyone in Field Marshal does as well. So if you get your pipes, blow them up for about, tune the drones and play 2 parts of a march, 3, 4, 6, 8, doesn't matter. Play for about 60 to 90 seconds, tuning the drones, and then just leave your pipes down for about 5 minutes. What that does, it gets some moisture into your reeds, into your bag, and it starts allowing the instrument to settle. Without doing that 96 degree air that you're blowing into is just going to get hotter and hotter, and the pitch is going to decline. That'll allow it to stabilize a lot better by doing that 60 to 90 seconds. Set your pipes down for 5 minutes and then go to do it. And in a second I'll talk about the band relation to that. I would limit practice to about 45 minutes for 2 things. You're just getting your bagpipe wet after that, and also your human concentration levels. You're not going to really be able to focus much after 45 minutes. If you want to play longer than that, take breaks. You know, do 45 minutes, take a 30-minute break, do more. And then what I tell all my students, record yourself practicing. Everyone's got a smartphone these days. Record the piece you're working on, and then maybe later that night or the next day listen back to yourself. But not only that, but listen to the quality of the sound that you're producing. Listen to the notes. Listen to the drones. Are the drones staying in tune? Listen to the quality of the intervals of the tuning between, you know, your low A up to high A. And I keep forgetting to say low G up to high A, but you know what I mean. Yeah. The day of a competition or a Highland Games, and this is something I see a lot of, it's a platform to perform. It's all the practicing and all the rehearsing and learning the tunes, that all needs to be done well in advance. All right? Showing up 2 hours before your performance at the games and playing for 2 hours isn't a good idea. It's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for the instrument. So the primary focus of the day of a competition is to get your bagpipe in tune and have it warmed up on time, so that whenever you go to perform, it's going to stay in tune for the duration of that performance, be it a jig that's 2 minutes long or a pibroch that's 16, 17 minutes long. Be careful not to overplay on the day of a competition. You're just going to make yourself tired. You're not going to perform to the best of your ability, and also your instrument's going to be wet and all start malfunctioning and stuff like that. give yourself plenty of time at games. Sometimes you have to park quite a bit away from games. Try to get there about an hour before you're scheduled to play. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get registered. The first thing you should do when you arrive is check your pipes. Make sure nothing's became loose. Make sure the chanter tape hasn't melted. Make sure the reeds are all tight in the reed seats. All that kind of last minute check stuff. Do that as soon as you arrive at a games or a competition, wherever it may be. And then play your pipes at your car, or if it's an indoor event in a tuning room for just 2 or 3 minutes, just to get some moisture into them. And then I've mentioned it twice already, don't leave your pipes in hot cars. Okay, so just some of the etiquette of the day of competitions. Warm-up times, I've mentioned, don't overplay. So for all of these events, for piping, you should be able to warm your pipes up and have them sufficient in 5 minutes for all of these events, the 2-4 march, 6-8, strathspey reel, hornpipe and jig. For a jig competition, even less is necessary because they're so short. Slow march competitions, if they still exist. For the slightly longer events, where if it's 2 6-8 marches or a march strathspey reel, maybe 7 to 10 minutes. For longer events again, Pibroch probably about 10 to 12 minutes. And bear in mind, if you're playing in more than one event, a lot of that time will have counted. So if you've already played your Pibroch and then you're going to play your MSR, you shouldn't have much more warming up to do because you've already been playing, I think the biggest thing here is you want to be doing this immediately before you compete or perform. All right, it's no use tuning your pipes up and warming them up for 15 minutes and then stand around and eat a burger or go to the beer tent for 30 minutes. Your pipe will have flattened off again. You need to do it immediately before. So it's a good idea to keep an eye on the competition. So 3 competitors before for the light music and 2 competitors before for the Pibroch. You need to start warming up, And obviously, a lot of things can happen on a day. Competitors can scratch, so you need to be prepared for all of the kind of adventures that competing brings. Make sure you're ready and all the rest of it. Check in with all the stewards and all that kind of stuff. Make sure that you're doing all of that. If you're in a Pibroch competition, the person before you could break down in the first line, and what you thought you had 15 minutes, now you've got 2 minutes, so you need to be kind of prepared for something like that to happen, like on the day. So some of the bread and butter points about solo competing. Make sure you know the rules. It's amusing when I'm judging, people don't have enough tunes submitted, or they come up and you're judging the 2-4 march and they're playing a 4-4 march, or something like that. Make sure you check the rules of the event you're playing. Make sure you're playing on a good sounding instrument. If the competition's in the sun, tune up in the sun. If the competition's in the shade, try and find shade to tune up in. There's going to be sometimes quite a significant difference in temperature between the sun and the shade the day of a contest, so try to use a little bit of common sense in that regard. You want to make sure you're getting from start to finish of the pieces you're playing a steady beat, playing at an appropriate tempo, and of course knowing the tunes inside out, where you've 0 errors, chokes, chirps, or squeals. All right, so a good rule of thumb is knowing the pieces you're going to compete at least a month in advance. And if you know the piece well enough, you'll be able to concentrate more on that, just getting your bagpipe, finely tweaked and all of that, and you'll not have to worry about rehearsing. You'll know the piece inside out, that you won't have to worry about that. Don't tune up very long. If it's heavy rain, don't tune up very long at all. Your pipes are just going to get soaked. The same thing if it's really cold. I don't think the Midwest run too many games when it's freezing cold outside, but certainly I've judged up in New England where there's been ice on the judges' table and stuff like that, so if it is cold, you're going to get a lot of condensation and stuff like that. So shorten the warm-up times. You obviously have to warm up a little bit. Try and keep it to 5 minutes or so if it's really cold or heavy rain. And if it is really hot, again, you don't want to tune up in the sun for too long. You're going to send your pipe over the top in pitch. Okay, when you're approaching a judge, judges always want you to succeed and play to the best of your ability. There's a lot of competitors don't seem to believe this, but I think it's true. Judges can look scary, me included, but yeah, they always want you to do your best. Always try to be respectful and courteous when you approach them. Remember the names of your tunes. It's a good bit of advice. If you can't do that, write them down on a piece of paper, all right? Especially if you have to submit multiple tunes, there's nothing worse than somebody coming, I can't remember the name of my march. It goes like this, and they start singing it, So another thing I wanted to talk about when you're approaching the judge, a lot of these games have large entries, all right? You can't tune your pipes for too long, all right? Some of the bigger events will have like tuning lights and tuning clocks and countdown timers and stuff like that. But even around the games, you don't want to tune too long. If you're playing a jig, don't tune your pipes for 10 minutes. You're going to do two things. The first thing you're going to do is annoy the judge. The second thing is you're going to hold up the competition. And the third thing you're going to do is you're going to get in your own head about your tuning, and you're not going to play well anyway. All that. There's not going to be that much of a difference in temperature outdoors from where you tuned up to where you're competing. So you want to make sure that you have all that fine-tuning done in advance, and it's just a little tweak of the drones or whatever it may be whenever you actually go to perform. So watch you don't tune for too long. That's something that I've witnessed quite a lot in recent years, going to compete, and I actually had recently a competitor that came and set their pipe case on my table and started to get their pipes out there and started to blow the chanter. I was like, could you not have done this, like before, so you want to be prepared and all of the rest of it. I've mentioned about make sure you have all your pieces memorized, all right? And the more you have the pieces memorized and you know them inside out, you can use the time of the day of a competition to focus on the tone and the what you're actually playing versus like the musicality of it and stuff like that versus what note comes next. Okay, I want to mention tempo a little bit. I know I'm deviating a little bit from tone here, but so the most important thing when you're performing, especially light music, is maintaining a steady beat. Marches, you should be able to march to a march, and you should be able to dance to strathspey, a reel, a jig, a hornpipe, whatever dance tune it may be. Once you get to about grade 2, you're pretty much expected to be playing at full tempo. And I'm talking about solo piping here, not bands or drumming. It's a bit different for them. But once you get to about grade 2, you should be playing at full tempo, all right? Grades 3, 4, and 5, it's a lot more important to have all the technique correct and playing with good expression and things like that. However, it can't be a slow air. There needs to be a kind of happy medium there. You can definitely play, and it's acceptable to play correctly at a slower tempo and be successful at the lower grades, but watch, if you go too slow and it's no longer a march or it's no longer a dance, then you've kind of lost the kind of musical idiom of what you're trying to do. All right, so that's a point I'd like to make. All right, so on to the band. Being an effective band member in terms of like looking after your instrument, showing up to band practice, all that kind of thing. Okay, unlike being a soloist, it's all about trying to be one cohesive musical unit. All right, there are no soloists in pipe bands. There's no I in team. I'm sure you've heard that expression before. Whatever the pipe major or band instructor says, it's correct. Whether you agree or disagree, stylistically, they're the boss, and you have to kind of run. If you're playing in their band, you have to run with the style and the tuning and all the rest of it that they're running with, the reeds, the chanters, all that kind of stuff. So it's all about uniformity, commitment, dependability, punctuality, all that stuff. Very important in the band. And as I say, sounding as one piper is basically the goal, and there's various ways to get around that. And obviously the other good aspect about playing a band is the kind of social aspect of it, and the enjoyment. It can be a kind of lonely thing being a solo piper, whereas if you're playing with other peers, there's a lot of kind of social benefit to that as well. All right, so the basics of any pipe band performance: you've got your good start, the attack or the introduction. So you make sure that you've got your drone reeds set up and your chanter reeds set up, that you're not going to have an early chanter. If you strike the bag too hard, you're not going to have a double toning bass drone when you strike the bag, that kind of thing. You want to make sure you're good in that regard. You want to make sure you're able to get a good cutoff, a clean cutoff at the end, and that your pipes are going to stay in tune from start to finish. If your pipes are staying in tune for, say, the longest set that you're going to play is likely the medley that you're playing in the band. If you're able to play the medley and your bagpipe stays in tune from start to finish at home on your own, it's going to do that in the band hall. It's going to do that in the competition when you perform. And it goes without saying, knowing the tunes and not having mistakes. All right, so I've used the word uniformity. All right, so uniformity, as a solo piper, there's lots of different manufacturers of chanters, reeds, drones, bags, all that kind of stuff. In a band, it's a lot easier to get a better or a more uniform sound if everyone's playing the same chanter reeds, same drone reeds, same chanters, whatever it may be. All right, I'm not going to start saying one's better than the other because I'm not getting into that kind of stuff. But yeah, everyone having the same chanter reed, I think, are the most two important things. Same bag as well. If you have a mixture of synthetic and sheepskin bags in a band, that can lead to tuning issues, and not everyone's pipes react in the same way the day of a performance. You're looking for chanter tonal quality, bright, rich projection. So I'm going to get into chanter tuning in a second, but you want the master chanter. So I used to always say the pipe major when I was explaining this, but not all pipe majors are the people nowadays that do the chanter tuning. So whoever's doing the chanter tuning, or if there's more than one person, the intervals in their chanter need to be right first. Right, so they need to make sure at the start of a band practice, the start of warming up for a competition, that they're happy with their pipes. If they go around and tune, if their F is flat and they go around and tune everybody's chanter, then all the Fs are going to be flat and you're going to get an imbalance of the sound. So important that the master chanter or the master chanters at the start when you go to tune are correct. And then it's all about matching that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. But the best way to tune all the chanters is to go around one-on-one and get the chanters matched. And playing tunes is always way more beneficial than playing scales. If you get pipers playing scales, they tend to adjust their blowing more because they're trying to find the master chanter. If you get them to play a tune, typically they're going to blow more like they're going to blow in the performance and more naturally and steadier. I've talked about, it's a lot of these topics are the same. You want the chanter balance. You don't want a thin top hand and things like that. The same thing as in a solo performance. You want the chanter to be well balanced from top to bottom. The drone sound in a pipe band, you really need to have an electronic tuner these days, especially the size bands are getting. It's almost impossible. If you have a band of 20 pipers, there's 60 drones. It's almost impossible for somebody to go around and tune those by ear. So some sort of electronic tuning device is absolutely necessary these days to try to get all the drones uniform. And some of the bigger bands now have multiple drone tuners and that, but yeah, having some sort of electronic tuning device is a big help trying to get all the drones in tune. And even if you can do it by ear, it's so much quicker to do it with an electronic tuner as well. Like probably 1/10 of the time it would take you to go around if you were trying to do it all by ear. Okay. Well, how to be an asset to your band? Well, without stating the obvious, practicing and knowing all the tunes at home and looking after your instrument. Attending band practice regularly. All the stuff that I'm going on to my students about. Focusing at band practice, and listening to the pipe major or whoever's doing the teaching, the director or whatever it may be. And, showing up prepared, showing up with your pipes going, not showing up with when you haven't played your pipes in 2 weeks, you showing up to band practice prepared is a big thing. Now, I showed you all how to change tape earlier, but I'm a big proponent of don't mess with your band pipes or your band reed, all right? If something's happened, like, if you, suddenly a drone stopped or something, yeah, certainly fix it. Or if the tape in one of your holes became all sticky and that kind of thing, certainly change it. But don't mess with the reed and the tape in your chanter. Try not to move it when possible. If everyone in the band does that, the pipe major's then starting from square one every single practice, right? So try not to mess with your band pipe. And it's a good idea to have, even if you don't play in solo competitions, have a spare chanter that you can practice with, or you don't need to play your band chanter all the time. You can play a different chanter if you want to go and do something else, or practice a bit longer. Yeah, as I said, make sure your drones are going to stay in tune for the band's longest set. It's usually the medley, grade 1, 5 to 7 minutes, and then it goes down the grades. Certainly your Marshal space and reels usually somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes. Make sure your drones are going to stay in tune for that. If they're doing it in the house, it's going to happen at band practice, it's going to happen at the competition, Likewise, if they're not staying in tune at home when you're practicing, they're not going to stay in tune when you're playing with the band. Similar thing about storage of pipes. I've had students that, every time they would show up at band practice, their chanter reed was absolutely through the roof in pitch. I was like, where are you storing your pipes? Oh, just in the closet in my room. And then it turned out it had a hot water pipe running through it, so it's basically cooking the pipes, using common sense is where you store in the pipes, and you have to be especially careful, like when you're traveling to competitions. If you stop for something to eat on the journey to the games, take your pipes in with you. Don't leave them in the hot car, that kind of thing. All that kind of stuff really matters. You need to try and play your band chanter every day, even if you're practicing your solo chanter or things like that. What I normally do is, after I've practiced my solo stuff, I'll put the band chanter in and just play it for 2 or 3 minutes, and that the moisture that's already in the stock is going to be sufficient. That's enough to be able to keep that going. All right, so and I'll mention it for about the 5th time, have neat chanter tape. All right, and a lot of pipe majors will like you to have the edge of the chanter tape all down one side so that they're able to find it quickly, and they're not going to have to spend 5 minutes trying to find the end of the tape. Just all those little things help, especially if you're in the final tuning circle, ready to go on to the competition, and somebody's E's flat, and you're trying to find the edge of the tape. All those seconds definitely matter. And I've actually seen, even at the Worlds, I've seen people get cut for things like that. Their chanter tape being sticky, or the pipe major can't find the end of the tape to move it, that kind of thing. So make sure you do all those kind of simple things and do all those basics right and well. I mentioned earlier about anything that goes into the bag with a hemp. Make sure it's tight enough that you need 2 fists to move it. Not so tight that you need a wrench, but make sure that it's got a good amount of resistance. And then for the tuning, what I'm talking about here is when somebody's going around the drones, make sure they don't need 2 hands to tune your drones. 2 fingers and a thumb is all what it should be, and obviously the opposite's true as well. You don't want it to be so loose that somebody tunes it and then it falls down out of tune. Okay. All right, so in terms of the repertoire of a band, make sure a band practice is a rehearsal. It's not a lesson, all right? So you're going there to rehearse the tunes. You're not going there to learn them, so a lot of that can be done in advance and at home. And then, it's about perfecting and rehearsing stuff versus, learning. Obviously, in some circumstances, like a junior band or something like that, it would be slightly different because, you're teaching. It's more of a teaching program than a performance program. But, for most bands, all of the learning and the learning of the tunes can be done in advance. And then it's about trying to work on the kind of finer details. And the more that people know the tunes and there's not as many mistakes, the more time that can be devoted to getting a better sound, in terms of getting the chanters tuned and the drones tuned and all of that. So one of the reasons why I'm mentioning this. Yeah. Make sure you play your band chanter every day. Don't leave us in a extreme environment, and make sure you're showing up to band practice that you can start and stop your pipes with ease. That you're not having to squeeze all the air out of your bag to get stopped, or it's not taking you 5 attempts at the attacks to get started, that kind of thing. All right, so the tuning of multiple bagpipes for the pipe major or the person who's tasked to do the kind of tuning. So similar to what I was talking about, allowing bagpipes to settle. So when everyone arrives at a band practice or the day of a competition, everyone should just play their pipes for about 2 minutes. I think I mentioned 90 seconds before, but about 90 seconds, 2 minutes, something like that, just to get a little bit of moisture into the bags, into the reeds, and allow them to settle. And while they're doing that, people can tune their own drones and then just leave their pipes down. And then after that, the most important thing, that everyone plays their pipes at the same time, right? So it's absolutely useless if someone arrives early at band practice and practices for 20 minutes on their pipes, and then somebody arrives 10 minutes late, because they're going to be at completely different pitch levels. It's all about doing everything together as a team. It's important not to start tuning chanters too soon. All right, so I would say a good 20 minutes is probably a good 15 at least anyway. Make sure you allow your chanters to acclimatize. Some people may have traveled further than others. Some people, had their pipes at work or whatever it may be, all different environments. So it allows a little bit more uniformity and everyone to kind of get acclimatized. So don't immediately start tuning chanters until everything's kind of settled. So a good 15-20 minutes into practice. So you can practice some of the tunes for your competitions or parades or whatever it may be before you start doing any tuning. And that'll also allow the drones to have settled as well. You're only going to get good accurate tuning if the drones are in tune as well. If the drones are out of tune, it's going to give you some false readings when you're going around tuning chanters. All right. Another really important point is only ever tune. It depends on how long it takes you or how far out of tune people are. You should only ever really tune 3 to 4 pipers at once. If it's taken a long time, maybe only 1 or 2 pipers at a time. All right. The reason being, the master chanter or the pipe major who's doing the tuning, they're playing their pipes for all of these times, and piper number 4 in the circle, they've been standing flattening off the whole time. All right, so you've got that difference in pitch there. So only ever tune 3 to 4 pipers at a time, and then either play another tune once you've tuned 3 pipers, play another tune before you move on and do more, or just get everyone to blow their pipes for a minute to get the ones that had flattened off or the ones that weren't playing back up the pitch a little bit. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I see bands doing that they could be doing better, would be doing that, making sure that everyone's at the kind of warmed up at the same level before you do any tuning. All right, so some etiquette at band practice. Any socialization and all that kind of stuff, that can be done before practice starts and after practice starts. Once you're kind of on pipe major's time, once you get there, and you're there to work hard and focus and all of that, the pipe major's going to be usually quite stressed trying to get all the tunes going, all the chanters tuned, all the drones in tune, all that kind of stuff. So trying to focus and all of that, and there's nothing worse than going to try to tune someone's chanter and then realize they've been at the bathroom or something like that. So trying to a little bit of common sense when you're doing that. And it's even worse the day of a competition. If you're in the final preparation for a performance or a competition or whatever, and somebody's away off talking to somebody, so you want to stay in that circle and try to be part of that team. It's no different than any sporting event, being a part of a sporting team. You wouldn't have somebody before a game go off and talk to their grandmother or whatever. You want to be part of that that kind of circle, the day of a performance. And then just finally to finish up, as I said, you're on pipe major's clock whenever the band practice is going on. After it's over, I think it's important to keep in touch with bandmates. There's all these emails, social media, text. Keep in touch with and stuff like that. Being part of a band is fun. And then as a band, have goals. What competitions, what parades, what are we going to be doing? Are we going to travel? Are we going to go to Scotland? Are we going to go to Canada? Are we going to, etc., etc. And that's what makes what we do fun. All right. So that is my waffle done for today. So if anyone has any questions, I'll only be more than happy to try and answer.
We had a couple in the chat here, Andrew. One was, how do you ensure drones stay in tune throughout a long medley or whatever?
Okay. Well, some of it's trial and error. So it's all about, you want to make sure the 2 tenor reeds are set up exactly with the same pressure. So you can use some sort of tuning device, electronic tuner, etc. for that. You can blow into it to ensure they're taking the same amount of pressure. All right, one shouldn't take more air than the other. And the same for the bass. The bass is slightly different because there's a different pitch and all of that, but it should be taken, it shouldn't be taking way more air or it shouldn't be stopping easier or anything like that. So having them all set up efficiently, I think, is the right word. And then whenever you're playing, if you notice your drones are going out of tune, say after a couple of minutes, find out which reed it is. Stop the end tenor, and if the other two drone reeds are still in tune, then it's the end tenor. And a bit of trial and error until you get familiar with which reed it is, and then the reed that's out of tune, see which way it goes. If it to get it in tune, does it need to come down or up, and that will tell you what way you need to adjust the bridle, to adjust the strength and the tension on the tongue so that you can bring that into line with the other two drone reeds. So that's kind of how you would do that, yeah.
All right, and then we had another one here. What should you do if you have trouble starting a drone? Strike in, I assume that means.
Yeah, the strike in. So generally it's the bass that would cause problems. And tenors, you want to tenors are easier because even if a tenor drone squeals, it'll still usually come in. If a tenor drone's squealing, you just need to open up the bridle slightly in terms of moving the bridle closer to the drone, open it up very, very slightly. Bear in mind, synthetic reeds are very, very fine adjustments. All right, Kane, you needed to move the bridle a little bit more, a lot less, and almost like use your fingernail, and you barely need to touch the bridles for quite a significant difference to be made on the pressure of the reed. For bass, I would look at where the drone's tuning. If a bass is misfiring or double toning, if it's tuning too high in that lower section, I would pull out the tuning screw and try and get the reed to tune a bit lower. That usually helps. And also, if the reed's continually misfiring or double toning, I would suggest that the tongue's too open on the reed and you need to define it down a little bit. So that would be, a little bit about starts there, just adjusting the reeds. So typically if a bass is misfiring, the reed's set too open and you need to fine it down a little bit, or it's tuning too high on the pin. Mm-hmm.
We have one here. What are some things to look for when picking drone reeds? I know synthetic reeds are usually going to function in most sets of pipes, but are there ways to sort through what works okay versus what works really well?
You're right in the sense of most synthetic reeds will work in most sets of pipes. There's lots of great synthetic drone reeds out there, a whole variety of shape, sizes, and colors today. I would say I would recommend playing the same brand in your pipes, if you know what I mean. So don't play, brand A in the outside tenor, brand B in the middle tenor, and brand C in the bass. I would try to stick to playing the reeds of the same manufacturer. That'd be one thing. And I guess if you go back to what I was saying about drone reed selection, once you do all of that and get your pipes to a level where your drones are in tune with your low A and they're holding in tune, basically just see how you like the quality of the sound, and then if you don't, well, try a different brand, and go with that. And what I will say is there's certain makes a drone reed that'll sound great in some pipes, and the same drone reeds might not sound great in another make of pipe. So it's not an exact science either, So hopefully that partially at least answers that question.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Jim, I have a question.
Yes, Tammy.
So is there a way to check? I was at a competition which I traveled to, and everything seemed airtight. But when I was actually playing, I was losing air, and I couldn't even figure out till I got home. It was I have a sheepskin. It was not tied in tightly enough. Somehow the it came loose. So
Mhm.
is there a way to test for that? Because when I tested my pipe, they seemed airtight, but obviously they weren't. So is there a way to test for that in particular?
So in the sheepskin, basically, you always want to, in a sheepskin bag or any sort of bag that's tied in terms of you're not using O-rings, you're using tie-in cord. Just check with your hands. Hold, make sure the stalks aren't turning on themselves. That would be a first kind of check. A second check would be cork up the bag and take the bag cover off, cork up the bag, and really squeeze, blow it up, make sure and really listen for any like slight hiss of air coming through, especially, and put it up to your face. You can generally feel a little bit of air coming out if there's a little gap somewhere between the stalks and the bag itself. A quick fix can be just to retie over the top of the so if you're at a competition and you've discovered a leak, you can just retie over the top of the pre-existing kind of tie-in cord that's already there. That's a kind of quick fix. But then obviously when you get home, you can then take that off and retie it. The best way for a sheepskin bag is you wrap the tie-in cord around a plank of wood and stand on it, and then kind of pull upwards to get the tension. That's usually the best way to get the tension on it. Or send it to some sort of bag manufacturer or somebody that has a bagpipe shop that does this all the time. They would be usually quite good at tying in bags. Yep.
All right, very good. No, I did have somebody tied in who's been piping for like 35 years, but
Oh,
I don't
okay,
know,
right, yeah.
I don't know if I was just a weird, and I couldn't even tell by turning it. It took my pipe major to really turn it with his muscles. So it's
Right,
just, but
yeah.
that'll help with that blowing and squeezing harder. So I appreciate that. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, that kind of thing can also happen if you've left your pipes, or if it's became pretty hot, or you're playing in the sun, things can dry up and stuff like that and get loose and what. Yeah, so it does unfortunately tend to happen, and it never happens in the house. It usually happens at the worst possible time as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
One more here, and then we'll wrap this up. It says regarding tuning bands, I've heard
Last
people
question,
say they
Pete.
like
I'm
to.
coming.
Hold it. Let me mute that one.
Tune the
There we are.
chambers with a slightly flat high A and flat F. Do you agree with this? I would disagree with flat high A. I'll tackle the F in a second. You want that octave to be correct, from low A to high A. The reason some bands do that is actually, it's like when they're playing in the sun, sometimes the high A's go sharp, or more the reason is people are playing reeds that are too easy for them and they'll overblow in the high A. The worst example that grits on my teeth is when you hear the mass bands playing Bluebells of Scotland, and the high A's are in outer space. But anyway, I think it's more important to try and get that octave correct between low A and high A. It's all about the harmonics of the instrument in the end of the day, and those are the fundamentals are the low A and high A. The same notes as the drones are tuned to, so you want those to be right. F is a kind of note that is known to be quite difficult to get in tune in a band, and you definitely will get a little bit more stability if they're set very slightly flat and not perfectly in tune. If you were to want to play Lament for the Children at Pembroke full of Fs, so I think it's acceptable, but subtly flat, you don't want it to sound noticeably flat, if that makes sense. So yes, I think it's okay to very slightly set all the Fs slightly flat, slightly being the key word. High A, I would try to keep that at a true octave, and as I said, the reason bands are probably doing that is because people are overblowing the high A's, and what I tell my students, if you're able to overblow your reeds too easy, you're getting the harder one, so yeah. So hopefully that answers that one.
All right. Well, just a couple of notes here that this will be up on the MWPBA YouTube channel in a few days, and you can go there anytime, subscribe to it. It's all free, and most of our past education series are on there, along with interviews and performances and all kinds of stuff. So that's all free to you. Secondly, next month's series is going to be with Graham Brown, the leading drummer of the St. Thomas alumni. That'll be towards the middle of March sometime. So tell all your drummer friends to come on to that one. And lastly, Andrew, I just want to thank you very much for doing this. I thought it was great. As a drummer, I'm probably the only drummer on here, but it's always interesting to hear the other side's story. And thank you very, very much. I see why you're so successful.
I don't know about that. All right, well, thanks for having me, everybody. And yeah, thanks for the invitation to be part of it. Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks everybody for coming. And hopefully we'll see you all soon at the Terry McHugh Memorial on March 21st and the Ohio Indoor on March 28th. Hopefully we'll see you all there. Have a good rest of your evening, everyone.